Hey, welcome back to the Touch MBA podcast. I am your host, Darren. So what are we going to do with this episode is we're going to continue our lessons from listeners. This will be volume 2, and the tips will cover tips for untraditional applicants, following the conversations you want to have, prematurely applying, and being strategic yet flexible. And these tips all come from blog posts from listeners such as yourself who have graciously chosen to share their hard-earned experiences on our blog at touchmba.com/journey. And I'm going to pick one tip from each of these admitted applicants and share it with you to help you on your journey. So at touchmba.com, what we try to do is really help you guys make the best MBA investment. So a lot of that has to do with, well, what's your universe of schools that you're applying to, as well as how can you improve your profile to give yourself the best chance of getting into your target best fit schools, right? So you can get free profile feedback from us at touchmba.com. Go over there, upload your profile, your career goals, your target schools, and we'd be glad to help you out over there. You can also get our online admissions course called the Admissions Edge. It's at touchmba.com/course. And if you're not willing to pay the thousands of dollars you need to hire admissions consultants to help you with your application, this course is the next best thing. It has the best of Touch MBA there, and it's a short and streamlined course covering every part of the application to help you get into your target schools. So you can find that at touchmba.com/course. Finally, I want to thank the sponsors of this episode, Kate Galloway, Eileen Chen, Anonymous Stern Tech MBA, and Jasper ESIP for sponsoring this podcast. And those are the names of the applicants who are now all MBA graduates who took the time to share their experiences on our blog at touchmba.com/journey. So I want to thank Kate, Eileen, Anonymous Stern Tech MBA, and Jasper ESIP for sharing your insights with our audience. All right, let's get to our first post. This was written by Kate Galloway, who graduated from the University of Texas Austin McCombs full-time MBA program in 2020. The title of her post was "Surprise, I'm Going to Business School, Tips for the Untraditional Applicant." And this is one of my all-time favorite listener stories. Unfortunately, my dad has actually been very sick over the past few months. And so I've been back home kind of helping my family look after him. And I've seen firsthand the power and importance of nurses and medical professionals and respiratory therapists and nurse aides and doctors, of course. It's really opened my eyes to how important these people are. So I'm really happy to share this post from Kate Galloway, who was a nurse herself before she applied to business school. So I'm going to cut to a piece of this blog post from Kate. Here we go. Touch MBA is a great resource for those applying to business school. However, I want to expand on their advice for non-traditional applicants, though these tips could apply to any applicant as well. As a non-traditional applicant, I often felt discouraged and out of place during the admissions process. After taking the Touch MBA profile review and best fit school recommendation service, I received disheartening feedback about my application. Nevertheless, I believe that I had more to offer than what met any reviewer's standardized checkboxes, and thankfully applied regardless of my quote-unquote score. I hope my story and advice can ease intimidation felt by traditional and non-traditional applicants alike. I am first and foremost a nurse. With many opportunities for career advancements and graduate degrees within the nursing field, I never expected that I would end up going to business school. But after years at the bedside, I became bothered that the care I deliver is directly impacted by decisions from C-suite level members who have never actually taken care of a patient. Rather than let this frustrate me, I decided I wanted to fix it. So this is one of her tips. Focus on your goals and how this program will get you there. The most important part of your application is your goals. Without these, nothing else matters. It may sound silly, but admissions are really good at figuring out who isn't being sincere. What is driving you to get this degree other than making more money? What impact on the world do you want to have when you graduate? How will this degree make you happier? Spend time looking introspectively and figure out what you want from a post-MBA life. Being able to clearly articulate your goals and synthesize them into a single sentence forces you to realize what is important to you. An example, I want to find financial solutions to nursing problems. Non-traditional applicants generally have non-traditional goals. So draw a roadmap for the admissions team clearly outlining how their program will specifically fit your goals and educational needs. How does their curriculum fill out your current weak areas? What university or department or business partnerships are you most excited about? Show admissions that you have already connected the dots and that you belong here regardless of your background. Okay, I'm going to share one more tip from this post because it's so good. This one is called Showcase Your Differences. Yes, you've heard this time and time again, but if you can't identify what sets you apart from another applicant, how will the admissions team? Thankfully, as a non-traditional applicant, this is one area that is a little bit more obvious, except that some differences in a non-traditional applicant can potentially be viewed as a liability. For example, lack of computational skills, lack of management experience. It is up to you to highlight these differences in a way that shows them as an asset to an admissions team. Example, 6 years of working in hospitals has taught me to think critically on my feet and given me the ability to remain clear-headed in stressful situations. Why is your unique perspective going to benefit your classmates? What do you bring to the table that no one else can? Business schools are looking to increase diversity, not only in their applicants, but also in the ideas and experiences brought to the classroom. Prove to the admissions team that you can contribute, even in areas that are not specific to your background. An example, as a nurse, I have had the opportunity to work with, care for, and learn from people from very diverse backgrounds. Okay, I shared a lot from Kate's post. Again, if you want to read the whole thing, go to the show notes of this episode where you can find a link to this post, or touchmba.com/journey to see all our applicant stories. Now, there's so much good stuff in her post. First, I want to say, yes, we did score Kate low. We did say that her target program, McCombs, was a stretch, okay? And I love that she wrote back and said, look, I'm glad you guys gave me feedback, but I'm glad I still applied to my target and got in. And here are some ways that I think others could do so as well and not be disheartened by the score you gave me. First, I have to defend our service in a sense that we get very limited information from you guys and we try our best to give an outside look at how competitive you will be at your target schools. Now, do we have the full application that these schools have when you apply to them? Of course not, right? But we hope that our rubric that we give you and our score is more like an aid as opposed to an oracle-like prediction of you getting in or not, right? We hope that our score can help you realize, oh, shoot, I need to optimize this part of my profile, or, oh, I'm competitive enough to apply to these schools, etc., right? That said, I think Kate's advice is so good, especially when she talks about how if you're a non-traditional applicant, you have to draw a roadmap for the admissions team outlining how their program will specifically fit your goals and educational needs, because you are not the typical person applying. So if you can help give the admissions team a vision of how you're planning to progress through the MBA program and how you plan to utilize, all the resources there to help you achieve your goals, that makes their job easier, right? So I think that's such a good tip. And also to show how your experiences can actually help you contribute to parts of the MBA learning experience that aren't even specific to your background. Like Kate's example, that being a nurse has taught her to think critically on her feet and remain clear-headed in stressful situations, which I've seen firsthand is totally true, right? So great tips from Kate Galloway. Thank you, Kate. Let's move on to our second post. This was written by Eileen Chen, who graduated from the Oxford Said MBA in 2019. The title of her post was Rankings Don't Matter. Go where you'll find the conversations you want to have. And the big tip is already in the title. So I would like you guys to think about this. Imagine you had your own podcast and you really wanted to have a lot of interesting conversations that would keep you coming back to record this show. When you talk to students and alumni at your target schools, are those conversations interesting? Do they motivate or inspire you? Are they the type of conversations you want to have not just as an MBA student, but as an alumni as well? So I think this is a great question to kind of select your short list of schools and eventually decide where you want to go. So this is from Eileen's post. An Oxford MBA alum told me that when she was choosing between schools, she chose Oxford Said because she felt the conversations she wanted to have were taking place here. A year later, I couldn't agree more. Rankings don't matter. Said Business School was ranked number 33 by the Financial Times when I applied. Now it's number 13. Who knows what it will be in 5 years? The lifelong benefits I'm getting from this MBA have nothing to do with rankings. They're the conversations you have, the people you meet, and the perspectives that change. I've learned so much in the way of soft skills by learning from my classmates. So really, when you visit schools, pay attention to the school culture and read between the lines. For example, for one of the schools I interviewed at, I remember talking to students who were interested in social impact, and yet none of them were aiming to work in that space after. Or ask applicants about ways in which classmates have helped each other out or how they've gotten to know people they wouldn't have usually hung out with. I think this is a very interesting perspective. It's easy for Eileen to say, rankings don't matter after attending Oxford, right? Which is one of the most recognizable university brands in the entire world. She'll always have that in her back pocket. I do think rankings and reputation matter, of course, because that's going to help open certain doors for you in your career. But let's face it, if you're listening to this show, you're looking to get into a top-ranked program or into a business school that has a long-standing top reputation, right? So if that's the case, I really agree with Eileen that you want to find the tribe that you're excited to have conversations with. This is a great way for you guys to decide once you get into 2, 3, 4 schools, which one you want to go to. I just want to highlight her questions. So for example, if you're looking for collaborative school culture, if this is really important for you, when you're talking to students and recent alumni, ask them, how do classmates help each other out, right? Or if you're looking for a program where you're really going to bounce into a lot of different types of people, a lot of different types of ideas, or a totally new industry, ask them, how have they gotten to know people they wouldn't have usually hung out with, right? So these are really clever questions that I think you guys can ask and help determine for yourselves which schools would be the best fit for you. Let's get to our third post. The title of this post is 5 Things I Learned When I Applied to Business School by anonymous NYU Stern Tech MBA who graduated in 2022. This applicant was also admitted to Cambridge Judge and Washington Foster. And in full disclosure, I actually met this person as an applicant, and I also met him after he graduated from NYU Stern Tech MBA when he was in Vietnam. And I'm going to share 4 of the 5 tips that he wrote in his blog post. Tip number 1, there is no harm in applying when you have little experience. I considered applying to business school over several recruiting cycles, but demurred because I thought that I wouldn't have enough experience to be a compelling candidate. In retrospect, I wish that I had applied earlier. If I did not get in, the learning process would have only strengthened my future applications. Tip number 2, You don't need to have it all worked out before you start applying. For me, learning about myself and defining my career objectives occurred during 3 phases over the course of the application process. During research, I learned most about what I did not want. During essay writing, I thought carefully about my past experiences and what narratives I could craft to market myself for future roles. Finally, after receiving application decisions is when I made a decision about the type of career path I would most like to pursue. Of course, this learning process only continues during school. Tip number 4, nothing beats unfiltered feedback from school alumni. I feel happy with the school selection that I ultimately made, but I would attribute this partly to luck. There's no doubt that applying during the pandemic had an impact on my approach. However, I think that I placed an undue bias on statistics and rankings in my research. I wish that I had made more of an effort to connect with alumni on my own and learn from their perspectives. When I did make these connections at other schools, it helped me to learn more, quote unquote, inside information about the school culture, alumni network, and student experiences that I used to narrow down my search. Finally, tip number 5. The 3 Ps are great, but if all else fails, show what you learned. Demonstrating successful leadership of people, projects, and P&L, or the 3 Ps, is the good stuff that most admissions teams look for. However, it can sometimes feel like a stretch to demonstrate this for every experience. As you prepare for interviews, if you're unable to connect the 3 Ps of leadership to certain experiences, describing the most valuable lesson or lessons that you took from the experience is a great alternative. And for those of you who want to listen to my episode about the 3 Ps, which this anonymous Stern MBA listened to, that's episode number 146, the 3 Ps of performance, which you can search for in your apps or on our site. Okay, so a lot of great tips here. Let's start backwards. So again, I think it's so true. I have really encouraged you guys over many years to try to quantify and qualify your work impact at your organizations in your resume. Make it easy for the admissions readers to see the impact you've had, both where you work and with groups, perhaps outside of where you work. Now, sometimes you're not always able to do that, and I think this applicant's tip to talk about the valuable lessons you learned is fantastic when you cannot quantify and qualify your work experience. And this is especially good for your essays and your interviews, of course. And admissions committees are really looking for this sort of self-reflective aspect from applicants, right? They want to know that someone can really digest experiences, both triumphs and failures, and learn something from those and move forward with more wisdom. So I think that's a great tip. The second thing I want to highlight is this idea of prematurely applying, because prematurely applying actually helps him, self-reflect, helps him determine what he wants and what he doesn't want, right? Helps him craft his story better. And even if he didn't get in the first year, it would help for the next year. So I think this is a really interesting idea. I think a lot of applicants use this strategy within one application cycle. For example, if they're applying to 3 schools in round 1, maybe they'll apply to 1 or 2 schools that are targets before they apply to their big prize business school, right? So they have that experience of going through the application process with 2 other schools before they apply to the school they really want to get into. I've seen applicants kind of do this as well through round 1 and round 2, because they all tell me that they get better at telling their story. They get better at interviews. They get better at writing their essays through each iteration, each time they do it, right? And in this case, this listener said, well, why not just do this a year earlier than normal? I would say the exceptions to this approach would be if you feel you could materially improve your application within the next year, right? Whether that's getting a much better GMAT focus score, whether that's getting a promotion in the next year, whether you're going to have this really huge project under your belt in the next year that you can talk about in your application, then I would say that's different. Then you might want to wait that extra year. But if you sense that not much is going to change in the next 2 years, then yeah, why not apply before you feel totally ready? Because this will only make you more ready. So this idea of prematurely applying, I think, is really interesting. Okay, let's get to our fourth and final blog post. This was written by Jasper, a super fan of this show, who got his MBA from the McMaster University DeGroote MBA in Canada and graduated in 2023. And the title of his post was "The Key to MBA Success: Be Strategic Yet Adaptable." Okay, so let me share part of Jasper's post. Every step of the MBA journey, from the application process to preparing for your classes, to applying to internships, to crafting your post-MBA path, relies on having a game plan. This is because the program is jam-packed with academic, extracurricular, and career activities, not including personal and social commitments. With this, a long-term plan and strategy will lead you to concentrate on achieving your ultimate goal in the MBA program amidst the noise. Now, let's talk about something crucial. When you're navigating the MBA path, it's absolutely vital to outline your objectives. Here's a golden rule. Ensure you have both short-term and long-term goals firmly established. Don't embark on the MBA journey merely as an avenue to switch locations for superficial reasons. I admit, aside from my desire for a master's level education, one of the biggest factors for choosing DeGroote and Canada in general is for my partner and I to immigrate and become permanent residents there. Although US and European schools are more prestigious and higher in rankings, only Canada and Australia made sense for our goals. The US has political turmoil and Europe language barriers, which makes immigration more difficult. However, between the two Commonwealth countries, Canada aligned more with our goals since I have a nearby US as an option to work and visit, or even live permanently. Yes, study the rankings, but also all the internal and external factors relative to your situation and desires. One major analytical framework in the MBA program is PESTLE. Why not use it in your MBA applications? PESTLE stands for Political, Economic, Social, Technological, Legal, and Economic Factors. Okay, back to Jasper's post. Picture this. I had a solid plan, a strategy, if you will. I was set on applying exclusively to pharmaceutical companies for my post-MBA job. A calculated move, or so I thought. But here's the twist. I wasn't as flexible as I should have been. My mistake? Relying on a verbal job offer only to find that a company restructure had erased my position. So what did I do? I pressed on, determined to secure my spot in the pharma sector. After all, it was my target industry. But I then realized that I needed to apply for roles beyond pharma. Days after, I was invited for an interview, and after a few weeks, I was hired in the insurance industry. Good thing I enrolled for the investment and insurance course in my MBA. That course played a pivotal role in passing my licensure examinations in insurance. Admittedly, the hiring team mentioned that they banked on my stellar sales experience as well. Although it was a little bit frustrating that my pharma goal didn't work out, I'm glad I stayed flexible. Due to major restructuring and layoffs happening in North America right now, I would rather work for a company that believed in me when I needed it the most. And that is in the insurance industry. I'm not closing the door on pharma, but I'm prepared to stay in insurance. The lesson? It's not just about being flexible with your post-MBA job. It's about embracing that adaptability from the very beginning of your MBA journey. Stay open to the possibilities that your MBA program holds. Attend events, even if they don't immediately pique your interest. You never know what lies ahead. And when that knock of opportunity comes your way, especially in an employer's market right now in North America, don't hesitate, seize it. Okay, so there's a lot to digest from Jasper's post, but I think the core of it is this paradox of having a clear what, but a flexible how, right? So Jasper is really saying, don't just apply superficially to MBA programs because obviously they're so expensive and they're also just packed with things to do. You need to have a strategy or game plan. Now, while you need that game plan, you also need to stay flexible. And in Jasper's case, he got his desired job in pharma, but then that position was erased and restructured. So he was forced to scramble. And now he's working in insurance. You need to have a clear idea of the direction you want to go, but be open and flexible to how you're going to get there. Especially with internships and jobs, you're not always going to get exactly what you want. But if you can stay open-minded and flexible, which is what Jasper is saying, you can still benefit from the MBA and get eventually to where you want to go. So this idea of clear what, flexible how is really huge. Also, this idea of PEST or pestle analysis, I think it is quite interesting, especially for those of you who are looking to immigrate. I think it's a good framework to think through various countries you might be eyeing to see which environment could really benefit you the most post-MBA. Okay, and I'll also link to a post describing pestle that can help you do this. So I hope you enjoyed these hard-earned insights from our listeners. Again, if you want to share your journey with our audience, please go to touchmba.com/contact. I'd love to publish your story on our blog and on our podcast if it can help other applicants. And I'm just so thankful to our loyal and accomplished listeners. So just to sum up the lessons from this episode, Lessons from Listeners, Vol.2. If you're not a traditional applicant, be sure to draw a roadmap for the admissions team that can help them understand your career goals and how you plan to take advantage of that MBA program's resources. Number 2, do your conversations fire you up? Go to the school where you'll have the conversations you want to have. Number 3, if you can't show results, if you can't quantify or qualify results or impact, show the lesson. I think this is such a great tip for your essays and for your interviews. And number 4, clear what, flexible how to make the most of your MBA experience and stay emotionally healthy during the entire thing. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Touch MBA podcast. Peace. Thanks for listening to the Touch MBA podcast. Remember, you can get free school selection help and a profile review at touchmba.com. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. Just search for Touch MBA.